happens all the time. It's built on a foundation of those who have paved the way. A generation ago, all of this would have seemed unheard of. And what's new to the world now will be incomparable to what's coming up next. Trust your dream. The future is counting on it.
Hello, and welcome again to another episode of the Black Techies podcast, sponsored by the HBCU Digital Network. I am your host, Herbert Stewart, and I am joined once again by our host emeritus, David Matthews, a.k.a. Packer Steeler, and our militant brother from another mother, Dominique Bass, a.k.a. Blackity Black Man. Welcome, you guys. Welcome.
Hello.
Hey, what's up?
As you guys may have noticed at the very beginning of the show, prior to us coming on, we may potentially have some new benefactors here, namely our friends from AT&T that are like really HBCU friendly. Big shout out for them. Occasionally you'll be seeing some ads, for their new promotion on our show. And again, a big shout out to our overlords at HBCU Digital Network for helping us to that. This is going to be a very apolitical show, given what's been going on. We're going to stay away from that today, and we're going to continue talking about something that we were talking about in the previous show, which is comics blurting out. And there was a show that came on HBO Max. I think it premiered like this past week about Milestone Comics. And for those of you out there that are familiar with Milestone Comics, that's the same comic company that initially did folks like Hardware, Static Shock, Icon, Blood Syndicate. Simply, it was a black comic book company for black folk that showcased black folk. And HBO Max decided to do a tribute show as it relates to that. We got to thinking, we decided we were going to talk about it this week. We're going to spend a good deal of time talking about what Milestone meant to the industry and what we hope to see with their reboot and Milestone Initiative coming up via DC. But I wanted to get the opinions of two comic book heads here, because we do have two comic book heads here on the show. So, when you think of Milestone Comics, what do you guys think of? Obviously, Static Shock is like the most famous of the people that we've been talking about. But I know me personally, growing up, obviously at first it was just Marvel and DC Comics, period. If it wasn't the Avengers or the X-Men or any number of other characters like the Green Lantern, for me, that was my favorite DC character. I didn't see too much in terms of representation until Milestone came around. And it was really dope to see, like I said, Static Shock is probably the most famous because, Static ended up getting his own TV show, and you can still see Static Shock, in the DC, in the main DC continuum in terms of shows and comics. But, I wanted to get you guys' opinion on what Milestone did when they, when Duffy and those guys created those characters.
Well, I wasn't around for most of it. At least I wasn't aware of it, I should say. I don't actually know when. Before, I haven't watched the HBO Max series yet, but my first exposure to a Milestone Comics character was, of course, Static Shock, and it was that show that was on TV. And I just thought it was DC. So I'm actually learning, like, because I heard about this show and because I'm, starting to research. I didn't even know that we had a black comic book company that had all these black characters, but there were some really cool characters that I actually am excited about the possibility of a reboot, because although DC owns it, here's the thing: as long as as long as it's going to be animated stuff, I'm super. DC does such a good job with animated characters, and they seem to the industry has seemed like they're not letting white people tell black stories as much anymore. They're not like mandating that it be a white person telling the black story. Meaning, not that they can't tell it, but if there's a black director, let's get that black director in here. And hopefully, there's going to be black animators that get hired because of this reboot. Hopefully, there's going to be, we're not going to go political because our leader said we're not doing political. So we're just going to say, hopefully, black people get to tell black stories, because that's kind of what we just want, more representation. I know as a kid, seeing Static Shock was meaningful to me, because other than Black Panther, and then like I was a comic book dude, and so actually reading the Civil War series, like, and seeing, I didn't even know about this the dude that gets real tall, Goliath. He's the one that actually gets killed in the comic books. But like, that's it's really impactful. Anytime you can see black people, anytime you can see representation of yourself, I think it helps. It just helps you identify with the story more. So.
Yeah, it's so I will admit that you two are probably the comic book heads. I'm more of a TV show cartoon head. So like a lot of what I know about like some of those characters like Icon, Static Shock, I know from watching like Justice League. Like for example, Icon was on Justice League Unlimited. And so of course I watched Static Shock. But one thing that I'm glad that I think Dom already said, like we have these shows out now that are being directed by black directors, that are being voice acted by black actors, and I think this is something that could really, honestly, we're kind of building on like for the past few years, actually, this kind of resurgence of HBCUs and uh, like black culture in general is kind of uh, getting a quote unquote glow up these days. So, but I think that now, if you want to go into more of the history of, um, I just forgot the name of it. Wasn't it? What's the name of the shop?
Milestone, bruh.
Yes, Milestone. Oh my God, like well, I'm blanking on the name. But you could go into it. You maybe kind of provide a little bit more context behind everything. But at least as far as Marvel and DC, I think we really see a good resurgence of all of this, and I think that it's only a good thing. And also, one more thing, it allows us to kind of tell those stories or get those perspectives out there that you might not see otherwise. There's an excellent episode of Teen Titans where Starfire is being bullied by this big alien guy because she is a Tamaranian, and so she goes up to a Cyborg, and she's like, "Have you ever been treated differently because of the way you look?" He was like, "Yeah, because I'm a robot." But like deep down, we all know what he really wanted to say, right?
Yeah.
but right, those kind of stories you can tell because people can see, or from a superhero perspective, right? From that, it doesn't have to be, like 12 years of slave or anything, but like, but you can still tell those kind of stories,
All right.
from
All right.
like,
I'm gonna go ahead and put up the banner.
but I mean, I'm a co-founder, so kind of. No, I'm just kidding. But no, but yeah, I'm just saying.
Yeah, so I didn't know until doing some research that we were going to be talking about Milestone Rocket. So if y'all watch
Oh yeah.
Young Justice,
Yeah.
Rocket was a Milestone character. And on the show, because Young Justice got it, like it's so underrated to me. Like I don't know that people are talking about it. That's some of the
Oh
best
yeah,
storytelling in
Young
the
Justice
industry.
is ridiculous, man. It
Like
is.
the storytelling is crazy. We're talking about gender identity, sexual identity, political identity,
Yeah,
racial identity, or like, what does it mean to be a patriot? Just all kinds of random like what drug addiction, depression, mental health, all these stories they're touching on. But one of the stories they touched on was, it was just some young black love, man. Rocket and I can't remember old buddy's name. That Who was it?
well, if you're talking about Rocket and Icon,
Icon. Was
that
that Icon?
that's Icon and Rocket were
Yeah, I
like
think it was Icon.
superhero sidekick. And I think you touched on a really good point there. And I think that's what, when I saw the show, I was really really, surprised in terms of just how far back Milestone as a company were using those characters to tell those stories. And I mean, like you said, Icon and Rocket were were foundational characters for the company when they came out. Hardware, which is, I kind of got the moniker the Black Tony Stark from, because Hardware was Milestone's version of Iron Man, except that he wasn't a rich playboy. He was kind of like us. He just was really smart and just built a lot of stuff, and he was militant. You know what I'm saying? Milestone really was ahead of their time in terms as a comic company, telling these stories, telling our stories, and just like, Dom said, DC did them a really good service in terms of bringing the same type of storytelling with these characters into their universe, touching on those issues. I remember reading the comic, and Icon's origin story. Anybody that's familiar with Icon is not just simply a black Superman facsimile. That dude is quite literally one of the strongest characters now in the DC universe, up there with Superman, Martian Manhunter, and the like. But his origin story is one that's really, really conservative. He crash lands on the planet, as an alien, takes on the shape of the life form that's closest to him, which happened to be a black woman during 1850s antebellum South in slavery, and he grew up in slavery. You know what I'm saying? They tell that story, and they tell how those experiences shaped him as it relates to his own identity and accepting identity of African Americans. And they tell so many stories in terms of the dichotomy that Black folks have to face. One of those comics that I remember reading, they were really talking about the period of time between, from the 1890s to the Harlem Renaissance, where you had Marcus Garvey's movement, you had W.E.B. Du Bois and the Talented Tenth, and you had the opposite end of the spectrum with Booker T. Washington, whose philosophy was completely different and more aligned with Icon's. And it was really, reading those series of comics was really cool. It was really cool to see those things and to really be able to identify with the character. And up to that point, you didn't see that a lot in comics. You didn't see that sort of, ethnic representation, not necessarily just for us, but in general. So
for anybody that wasn't a straight white man.
Exactly. And
there wasn't very many female superheroes. There were no Asian superheroes. And if they were stereotypical caricatures, and they were always the bad guy, like the Mandarin. There wasn't a Shang-Chi. There wasn't, you know what I mean? Like the industry had to get bigger. We just had to start having people who look like those people get in with the skill and the talent and the courage to step out and try something, right? So I cannot wait.
Yeah. And, I want people to really take a look at what they're going to do. the Milestone Initiative is something that they were talking about. And this is really cool stuff, particularly for those of you that are watching the podcast out there that are content creators, that are artists, that do storyboards. Hit these guys up now because they are looking for artists for new comics, for new comic, book storyboard, writers and artists and creators. And they're trying to really bring a new generation of young people into that initiative to rebuild Milestone Comics in another image. Although it's under the DC banner, it's something that's really, really cool that DC is doing to pay tribute to the original company. So it's really something that when I watch the show, and by the way, I recommend anybody that has HBCU again, HBO Max to go out.
Discover Max.
Yeah, bruh, we're gonna get into that. Anybody that's out there that has HBO Max, to check this out. It is really, really dope. And Dwayne McDuffie, one of the founders of Milestone Comics, is a pretty extraordinary dude. That dude is like I said, he was a trailblazer. He was really ahead of his time. It's something that in terms of our telling our stories and our experiences, he was second to none. And I mean, I know Stan Lee, is an ally and rode for the culture. We love you, Stan. Hail Wakanda. But Milestone's got to get its props. And I mean, while we on the topic of of comics that could be brought back to the mainstream, I think about Wildstorm Comics. I think about Image, Wildstorm the Image, Gen 13, Wildcats. I'm waiting to see somebody redo Wildcats. So,
I love the Wildcats. They did a TV show. It just wasn't super popular. It just wasn't super popular, man. I never got it. They did a video game, a TV show.
The TV show is
very interesting characters.
One of the dopest intro theme songs ever. And I'm, I want to play it on the show, but I ain't trying to get a copyright strike. Again. I mean, people being finicky about that. But if you're on YouTube, all you gotta do is look up the Wildcats theme show intro. That's like one of the hardest theme show intros I've ever seen for a Saturday morning cartoon. That joke is ridiculous. But yeah, it's it's definitely something that we tend to take for granted now, that inclusion is kind of it's kind of been mandated now, that inclusion is something that we strive for. But for a long time it wasn't. It wasn't something that we could take for granted. It's something that for lack of a better term, we just I can't stress enough how important seeing something like this, like the Milestone Initiative, is for this generation of young people coming up that are looking
to be artists,
to be
or
creative,
comic book storytellers, all that. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly.
Also appreciate you, Keith. Yeah, we appreciate you watching live.
Yeah, big shout out to Keith. Keith is also, by the way, a brand new member of the HBCU digital family. He runs the Fangs Up podcast for FAMU sports and culture. So welcome, Keith. We're going to chop it up real soon, like after the show soon. So thank you for tuning in, bro. And I think, like I said, I mean, I've noticed some of the new stuff that's been coming out in terms of, just things that we've been seeing in terms of content. Like you mentioned earlier, Young Justice. That, to me, that's one of the best animated series that's on right now. Period.
That's ever been on, honestly.
Yeah, they knocked that out the park.
I haven't seen them. Is there a recent season? I don't think I've seen a recent season.
Yeah, and it's real. Like,
I heard it was like a little bit more
adult.
Mature.
Yeah, like it's definitely some more mature themes. It's not graphic, and it doesn't step over the line where like I would feel uncomfortable with my kids watching it or whatever. But it's definitely some themes that, like, if you're a more conservative household, or like we don't talk about that kind of stuff in the house, there's gonna be some stuff brought up. It was
Mhm.
definitely like depression, suicidal ideations, just all the things that you don't typically see from a cartoon, especially a superhero cartoon, especially like Beast Boy. Like, he's so silly, and now all of a sudden he's like, he don't want to move. It's just like the thoughts that he was expressing, having, and the way he's pushing away people he loves. And it's good, I think, if you're a kid and you watch that, and then you see stuff like that happen in real life. You see your friend, you can like relate that in a way where nobody else is talking about mental health, but you remember when Beast Boy did it, and so you can get your friend some help. Because it was
Yeah.
very real. I've definitely met people who would push you away when you could tell they're hurting. You know what I mean? And they did it so well, man. Honestly, we could talk. We could have. There should be a podcast just breaking down Young Justice episodes, for real. It's deep.
Mental note: do podcasts on schedule podcasts for Young Justice.
and Cannon Busters.
Oh man,
Still got to talk about Cannon Busters eventually.
Dude, you lucky Roberto. Lucky Roberto ain't on the show. Big shout out to the other, the fourth member of our core, Roberto Joseph. Wherever you are, bro, we look to see you back relatively soon. We know Atlanta is kind of crucial for folks these days. So whether you stuck on,
well, I'm not even in Atlanta, but I'm from Atlanta.
yeah. Whether you stuck in traffic on 90 on 85 and Peachtree, or you caught up, we look to see you back soon, bro. But we're going to go ahead and take a really quick ad break, and then we're going to come back to our conversation about representation in comics and and animation and all sorts of other stuff. We might have some surprises in store. Stay tuned.
We all stand on the shoulders of those who came before us.
A black future happens all the time. It's built on a foundation of those who have paved the way. A generation ago, all of this would have seemed unheard of. And what's new to the world now will be incomparable to what's coming up next. Trust your dream. The future is counting on it.
All right, and we are back. Thank you again, AT&T, for the inspirational spot. I'm really, we've been talking about representation, and characters in DC, in both DC and Marvel universes that have been doing, the thing. I'm gonna go against the grain here a little bit and do a little impromptu review about John Stewart's Green Lantern origin story that I just saw. Now, you see the look on my face as I say this.
Where'd you see it?
Now it's on. Yeah, I mean, you can catch it on YouTube for purchase. And I was excited to see it because I wanted to purchase it, and because the Green Lanterns is one of my favorite Green Lantern, storylines and stuff are one of my favorite comics, and John Stewart is a really intriguing part of that. But how can I put this?
It was the greatest thing ever. No, I'm just
yeah, I think DC dropped the ball on what they could have did with this. And for those folks that are out there, there are some semi-spoilers about what I'm going to say. So if you want to wait and see it for yourself, mute this portion of the podcast. If not, I'm going to kind of dive into what I saw. Okay. Essentially, they changed John Stewart's origin story a little bit. And they set it against the backdrop of an apparent interstellar war involving the Guardians, involving the Green Lantern Corps, and involving the Thanagarians and some other folks that we had to get reacquainted with, in the DC universe. Some of the main characters in the show, Adam Strange, who is a very, I don't want to say obscure, because
that's a different person than Adam Warlock, or is that the same person?
No, completely. Adam Warlock is
Marvel.
Marvel.
Adam Warlock is Marvel. I'm wilding. Okay, yeah,
man.
bad.
Where's your banner at, dude? But yeah, I mean, Adam Strange is a more obscure character in DC Comics. They kind of did Shira Hall, Thanagarian in this show, but no,
the Hawkeye's homegirl,
right?
Wife,
but
are they married?
Yeah, they were. Her and John Stewart had a thing too, according to the Justice League and Justice League Unlimited shows. But they kind of erased all of that canon during this origin story. And parts of it were really, really good in terms of how they depicted John Stewart. They depicted him as a Medal of Honor winner who was going through trauma and all sorts of other stuff. But the way they kind of did the Guardians and how they did the Sinestro Corps, and more importantly, how they did Hal Jordan. They did Hal Jordan dirty in this. And I mean, it was really for somebody that is the franchise of the Green Lantern comic, the actual comic world of Green Lantern, they did that dude dirty. They really did. They really lost the opportunity to kind of tell his story. Particularly when, now you're probably going to start seeing things about the Green Lantern come up, and they're going to probably start to, DC's supposed to be working on something for his origin story. But watching the show is almost watching like a standalone story about the Green Lantern that wasn't integrated with anything else canon. So, this was something that that kind of I mean, spoil it, bro. Thanks, Keith. This is kind of something that I mean, DC normally knocks it out the park with the animated movies and shows. They could have did better with this one. And I'll give them a pass, because normally when they do the animated stuff, the stuff is on point. All of it.
Is this a link to any of the previous ones? Because I know they have like a little mini universe with their animated films.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
A lot of their animated films are in their own little universe.
Yeah,
that's the one thing that I don't necessarily like, is that how much of it is not canon, and figuring out what is canon and what's not, and you kind of get a different answer every time. Like, it's just some of this stuff's weird, but it's comics, man. It's not real. I'll allow. The older I get, the less I'm needing my stuff to be more true to like some version of real for me. Like the comic books I read, whenever I watch the movies, I'm like, man, he wouldn't do that, or man, like, I'm trying to suspend reality to watch this stuff because it's not real, right? And like when Scarlet Witch did what she did to the Illuminati in Multiverse of Madness.
I don't even, man, bro,
I was like, ain't no way.
What they did to the Illuminati in Multiverse of Madness that was criminal.
But
it really was.
What they really telling you is that Scarlet Witch, she's a baddie. She's here, right? That's all they were really trying to show with that.
I mean, they were just trying to prove how powerful she was. Yeah,
right?
I get it.
So,
it was almost kind of like
a ranking in my head. Right? I got a ranking in my head of the top superheroes, and she not number one, but Captain Marvel was right there. She like in the top 3, but that's our universe's Captain Marvel, and so maybe Captain Marvel ain't as strong. Who knows? I don't know. I gotta let it go, but I hear what you're saying.
Man, anytime you got Black Bolt blowing his own brains out, dude.
I mean, she just took that man's lips. You can't take that man's lips. She can make him think that his lips are gone, but to actually remove the man's lips,
but not just that. You're talking about the smartest man potentially in the universe, Reed Richards, telling her how to beat Black Bolt. in the scene,
Well,
right?
how would how smart is it? Does he know did he know she could take his lips?
Yeah, that's the thing.
Ain't nobody ever before that or after that in
yeah.
comic books ever took somebody's lips off of them.
Well, I look at it like this. If they were telling, and this is a classic type of segue where if you guys are watching us, we tend to do this all the time. If you're watching that movie and you're a Marvel head and you're familiar with the Illuminati and you're familiar with, just how influential that cabal of characters is, you can't watch that, objectively and be like, okay, you got Captain Marvel, you've got Reed Richards in this universe, who's one of the smartest men that in reality, you've got Black Bolt, who's royalty and one of the most powerful characters in Marvel, and it's like, bruh, I get it, but did you have to do them like that? Did you? And like I said, I get it because this is, the whole premise of the Multiverse of Madness movie was showcasing, Wanda's, conflict and dissent. I get that and how powerful she could be even when she's unhinged. So that's something that part of it I got. It's just, the Marvel stickler in me looked at that. It was just like, dude, y'all could have did better.
Let me ask you all a question, just somewhat going back to the representation issue. So all right, one of the common complaints that I've seen is that like they'll have like the Black version of like existing superheroes, right? And so there's the complaint, well, why not just make a new character with their own powers, with their own. So what, like, for example, like Sam Wilson is the new Captain America, Miles Morales is Spider-Man, stuff like even Green Lantern, right? John Stewart is the Black Green Lantern, right? In addition to Kyle Rayner and Hal Stewart, or Hal Jordan, rather. I'm sorry.
Hal Jordan. Yep.
So well, I'm just curious. What are you all's thoughts about that accusation? Or like, are you fine with like Miles Morales and Peter Parker as Spider-Man, which I think is fine because they have different skill sets. And if you play the game on PlayStation, you know what I'm talking about, which is fantastic, by the way. If you have not played Spider-Man and Spider-Man Miles Morales on PlayStation, PS4 or PS5, play it.
Man, don't get Roberto started.
He could. That's a whole podcast for him.
Yeah, that's many Miles Morales right there. But
I get it.
I look at it like this, man, and I get. I think it's divided into two camps because you got a demographic of purists out there, and I use that term loosely, purists, that don't like seeing change, period, when it comes to characters, particularly when it comes to their favorites. Mainstream characters like Superman, Batman. On the Marvel side, you're talking about the X-Men, you're talking about the Avengers, Captain America especially. And, I hate to say it, but a lot of that, some of that stems from, our own portrayals, of what is deemed, acceptable and worthy and upright in terms of what we perceive to be a superhero and what other demographics perceive. You know what I'm saying? I mean, anytime, this isn't just limited to comics. We see this, in a lot of, media across the board. I can remember the stink about not Harry Potter, but about the I can't even remember the movie. It was
it a magician? Or
no. It's
you mentioned Harry Potter.
No, it's not Harry Potter. It's not magician. But
Oh.
it was a movie series based on a series of books. Katniss Everdeen. I'm trying to figure out.
Hunger
Oh, the
Games.
Hunger Games.
There you go. Thank you.
We talking about Black Rue being black.
Yeah. You know, and you saw and that's a perfect example. I mean, the flashback on social media, you know, when they changed the character from the book was just.
But that's the thing. They didn't change the character. If you read the book, she literally describes her as having darker skin. Like that was so. I read all of them, including some Songbirds and Snakes. I am a Hunger Games fan right here. So right. So and I've seen all the movies with my daughter. Right. So yep. I give me all of it. But so that whole accusation is ridiculous because.
Well, I think we have to separate like the racists in the room are usually the loudest people, and we confuse that for like a lack of acceptance. I think oftentimes because second sister in Obi-Wan is a black woman that got a lot of flack, but like people still watched the hell out of that show. And they're going to, right? They can make an all-black Star Wars. The nerds are gonna be like, "Oh, why everybody gotta be black?" Play,
pretty much.
And so it's like let them have their like they're gonna have to get to a point where they just realize life now is not all white. We have to allow them grace in this transition where they're not the natural default. They still are primarily the default. Listen, I don't know if y'all play Elden Ring. You can't make a black character on Elden Ring. Like you can kind of make you can blackish. You know, if he short bald head, you can do a bald head black dude. They are not doing black hair right in 90% of games that exist. You know what I'm saying? So as far as your question, Dave, representation, I don't like it when I do think we need our own characters. We don't need to necessarily have a black Superman per se, right? But what is Superman? You know what I mean? Like, I don't want you to cast Superman as a black man. I didn't want them to cast. I didn't necessarily hate it, the idea of Idris Elba being a 007 because 007 is not. I don't want him to be James Bond. I don't want to be a black dude named James Bond, but 007 is just the designation for the person doing that job, right? And so I'm cool with you. Like, I didn't like Michael B. Jordan as Johnny Storm, especially when Sue Storm was a white woman, right? So. I don't like because make that make sense, right? Make that make sense for me. You can't make that make sense except you was like they're gonna be out there. The colors will come out to the theater. The colors will come out to the theater. Out being a dumpster fire. If we get Michael B. Jordan in here somehow, some way, right? And so I didn't like Michael Clark Duncan as Kingpin in that disgustingly terrible Daredevil movie. I did not like Michael Clark Duncan as Kingpin. Make a new bad guy. You have to write. It's a movie. Make a new bad guy. Call him Big Blackie. Whatever you call him, he don't have to be. That won't fly. But my point is, I don't like it. Like I wasn't amazed. I wasn't super fond of the casting of Zendaya as Mary Jane, except for somebody pointed it out. She's biracial, right? And so we claim her, but maybe they claim her too, right? And so, cool.
I think most people are fine with it, honestly. I haven't heard any complaints about.
Well, because everybody loves Zendaya. I love her, and I think she played the role well. I was just like, why I got to be MJ? Why can't it be Peter's next door neighbor Keisha? You know what I mean?
Also, wasn't Lit? Wasn't no wait? That was someone else. I'm sorry. The first Homecoming, the mixed girl that Peter was into. That ended up, the vulture was her father.
Oh yes. Michael Keaton's daughter. Michael Keaton's daughter. Yeah. I can't remember. Yeah. Yes.
I forgot her name, but yeah. Now, and I was thinking she was the other girl
Gwen?
that Peter's
you thought
into.
She was Gwen?
Gwen, yes.
Yeah.
No, it's not Gwen. I know it's not Gwen.
Nah. But yeah, so I don't like it when they do that. Like, don't give me diversity for like
diversity's sake.
Give me diversity because you believe a black story is worth being told, or let me get a Ryan Coogler, Ava DuVernay in here to tell our story, right? Let's green light more projects because there's no shortage of people wanting to go to the movies. There's there's not like a maximum number of movies you can put out in a year, right? And so let's green light more than just Black Panther, right? Let's bring Spike Lee in. Let's bring all these different or maybe Spike Lee's a push actually at his age. Maybe we don't want him directing comic book movies, even though I would love to see his version of that like single cam, that little rolling shot that he does in a superhero movie. But
Man, y'all gonna
I
have
do believe that we definitely need to like Children of Blood and Bone, the story by Tomi Adeyemi. I know they greenlit it and there's a film I think being produced, but just like stories like that, there's so many out there. Like let's just get more of our stuff on the screen, and then you don't have to make Superman can stay white forever. For the white people who don't want to watch anything other than white, keep white people stuff white, and let us tell our stuff too.
I mean, to kind of somewhat answer my own question, I'm kind of like you, right? Let's make our own characters with their own powers, their own motivations and stuff. And I think, I mean, I feel like they can be similar. Like, for example, like Miles Morales and Peter Parker, right? I mean, yeah, they're both Spider-Man, but there's also a Spider-Gwen. And so I'm just saying, there's also a Spider-Pig, right? Yeah. So, I mean, that's not really that big of a deal. And like you said, I don't like when they turn at the actual characters themselves, like Superman. Like if there was a Clark Kent that was black, I wouldn't like that. That's not Clark Kent is white. Yes. Well, he's Kryptonian, but right. So like, but
white presenting.
Right. So like, but I'm totally okay with like John Stewart because the Green Lantern Corps is like a whole bunch of people.
Exactly.
In this
Anybody could be a Green Lantern.
Right. Yeah, anybody could be a Green Lantern. So I'm totally fine with that, but I'm also fine with having like our own thing. Like Black Panther is a totally different character, right? Icon and Rocket, like they're their own characters that you can have their own stories and not have to necessarily ape what someone else. Even
and we call it the Black Superman, but it's not. It's just they have similar powers, just like Shazam and Superman have similar powers, but they're not. Nobody calls Shazam the Magic Superman. He's just Shazam, and then there's I think it's fine.
What do you all think of this is actually somewhat of a segue kind of and related. We kind of talked about it last time, the Black Adam, right? So, The Rock is Black Adam, but he's black. Well, what is it?
He's black. We're claiming him.
Black. Yeah. Blackity black.
His name is Dwayne.
I mean, I think with Black Adam's casting, I think that was more.
The Rock wanted to make this movie.
Yeah, I think it was a little.
Yeah, he pushed for it. Yeah,
he pushed for it. I think it was a little easier for DC to cast this dude because of what Black Adam represented on the comic in general, in terms of his features and things of that nature.
I think it was easy for them to cast him because it's The Rock, and every movie The Rock puts out does 100 million. It's going to sell.
Yeah, that too. I think that was the primary reason. But I think people, look at that casting and, don't have a problem making the stretch from, it being The Rock to the similarities between Rock's characteristics and Black Adam's characteristics in the comics or any other animated feature that you've seen him in. So, I mean, and
nobody want to see, Bruce playing Black Adam or, a certain thing. Like, he look like that. Yeah, he can be a superhero. Whoever you want.
I haven't heard that name in a long time.
Yeah, and I'll just do this before we take our last ad break here. I mean, I've got, I'm cautiously optimistic about that Black Adam movie. But like I said, I say cautiously because we all know what the track record is for DC in live action films. If this was animated and I'd be
live action though. There's been two movies that I wouldn't call trash out of DC.
Yeah, and I think this is a good opportunity for DC to change that narrative. But if it bombs, that's a modicum of trust that they're never ever going to get back.
They're gonna keep trying. They have the kind of characters that you're gonna keep coming back for. Like we watched Edward Cullen as Batman, so
Yeah, I got you. I hear you. Well,
They can come right back out with a new Batman, and Batman's a 16-year-old kid, Logan Paul or whoever they want to make as Batman. We gonna go and we gonna watch it. We gonna give it a shot every time. We gonna give it a shot. Us comic book nerds, they can't really go wrong. Like bombing for them is still 400 or 500 million.
yeah, no comment. Well, we're going to take our last ad break of the podcast, and we will be right back. We'll be talking about Samsung's Unpacked display for 2022 when we get back. Stay tuned.
Yeah, baby, you know what time it is. Now let's get it started. Are you kidding me? Unreal!
While our HBCUs are mostly known for academic rigor, community, they also know how to turn up.
Does he have it? Yes, he does! And that might be the knockout punch.
And we are back. Recently, Samsung had their Unpacked event for 2022. And it's always interesting when we see, these types of events come, whether it's from Samsung or Apple or Microsoft or you name it, when it comes to consumer electronics, because we're really at a point right now of saturation when it comes to specific types of consumer electronics, particularly cell phones, mobileware, things of that nature. And just looking at some of the stuff that we've seen, that was featured in this year's edition of Unpacked. Normally when I look at stuff like that, from year to year, I'm pretty enthused about it. This year, not so much so. It's really mid for me. But
I love that that's part of the lexicon now. Everybody just casually throwing around weed terms.
And I don't know if that's necessarily Samsung's fault or if that's just a natural byproduct of the oversaturation of the industry for certain types of technology.
Both and.
Yeah, but I wanted to get your viewpoints on that from what you've seen from this year's edition of the Unpacked presentation.
Boring. So to be fair, let's just go ahead and say it. I'm no longer on Team Android, so I'm watching it like this the whole time.
Oh yeah, we got to put out this disclaimer before Dom goes any further. Dom is not Team Android. Dom is Team iOS through and through. It's
Except for a PC. I'm not rocking the Mac. Y'all, I'll leave the Mac for y'all. But everything else, let me tell you something. We out here, we iPhoned up. We iPadded up. You know what I'm saying? We Apple Watched up. You know what I mean? Like, I don't use AirPods no more. I use Bose, but because they have better noise canceling, and I'm a fancy brother. But it's everything was just very iterative. Everything is very much like, you've seen the Z Flip. Here's the Z Flip again. This year's version. It's the same phone. Then here you go. This is the Z Fold. You remember the Z Fold? Bow. You remember what it did? It does that again. Still better cameras.
Yeah.
Hey, the watch. Y'all like the watch? Same watch, better battery.
Yeah,
Hey.
I say this as an Android guy, and I'm just like, meh. I mean, and
Shout out to you, Keith. That's a smart man down there.
And I'm kind of like, we've seen enough of these presentations.
Apple would never. Let me just say that. I'm not saying that every single time they've come out they've won, but at least they come out and be like, hey, let me tell you, this one does some crazy stuff. And it's stuff you'll never use, right? But at least they got some features to mention. It's not just better cameras. This year's camera can see inside your body. Like this year's camera, you can literally swallow this joint, digest it, and see inside your digestive system. And then when it come out the other end, you pop it back in your camera, and now you can send that information to your doctor. That's the kind of stuff that Apple would do, whereas Samsung's just like, hey, last year it was 12 megapixels. This year, 12.5.
Yeah, I had to put the banner up. But all jokes aside, man, I think people can be jaded depending on what side of the fence you're on. Whether you're an Apple guy or Android guy, or you're somebody that you may not necessarily even be a fan of either one of those ecosystems. You might, just
be off the grid and not use cell phones at all, because otherwise, how are you not a fan of either of the ecosystems?
Well, when I say that, I mean there are other competitors that, even though they fall under Android.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Not a Samsung guy, not an Apple guy, but maybe like a Huawei phone and
OnePlus
nothing phone.
I mean, OnePlus.
Nothing.
Yeah, well, nothing phone.
Yeah. You one of those wild cats that got the essential phone and you liked it. You're one of the 13 people.
Yeah.
Hey, I ain't gonna lie. I felt the same way when I got my Windows phone back in the day.
Hey,
Windows
they tried.
phone.
Listen, at least they tried. I didn't hate the Windows phone. Windows was not great at software, on mobile software. They were not great at mobile software.
Well, I don't know. Like Windows Phone, the software, the OS itself was actually pretty good. It just didn't have the apps. It was very
didn't have app
consistent.
support. That's fair.
It was just the app support.
But also, we don't necessarily want a desktop on our phones. You know what I mean? Some of the stuff that they were doing, but some of the stuff they did, like that last phone they put out, the Nokia with the tile system and all that, it wasn't bad. I didn't hate it. But everything it just kind of naturally delineated into you need either Apple or Android. And if you're an Android, you're most likely a Samsung, but then there's your random,
I'm Pixel guy. I haven't been back.
You're a rebel without a cause.
Hey, I mean, I used to be a Pixel guy. I like the Pixel.
I love the Pixel. Actually, the Pixel is a great, but part of the reason that I love the Pixel is because you don't have to wait for updates. And that's like that.
Samsung's gotten a lot better though. Samsung actually they have drastically improved since before.
They have.
So I will say about Samsung. So you mentioned that in the US, and I will caveat this by saying I'm also Team Apple here, but I'm on a Mac here. But
Here's that banner.
I know, right? But so unfortunately, like when it comes to their folding phones, right? Because that was the standout, right? The Galaxy Fold 4. But since Samsung is basically the only game in town right now when it comes to folding phones in the US, they're not going to make those big, huge changes. They're going to do more iterative, because
stuff.
Right. I mean, Microsoft does have the Surface Duo 2, right? Which actually I think from what I've heard, it's actually a lot better now than when it first came out. But it don't have the market share that Samsung has, and unfortunately, the US won't let Chinese companies sell any phones here because not Xiaomi.
Xiaomi. Isn't it Xiaomi?
Xiaomi.
Maybe it is Xiaomi. They have their own folding. I think it is Xiaomi.
Xiaomi, Huawei, pretty much any major Chinese manufacturer.
But they have their own folding phone that's actually really good, but they can't sell it here.
Right.
So, and it would give Samsung much needed competition.
They
can not sit on their laurels.
Also, $1,799.99 in today's economy.
Yeah.
Come on.
You better hope Samsung gives you a good. They do have good trade-ins.
Yeah,
they got some fire trade-ins.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because this is I know we kind of stressed that we were going to be apolitical this show. But a lot of times when we look at, these consumer rivalries, and, mobile, the mobile phone wars are a perfect example of that. A lot of times, man, we kind of take for granted that they're tied to some very real life, real world types of things. Anything made by China these days, trying to come into the U.S. marketplace is going to be looked at with an automatic side eye, just for,
as it should be.
Yeah,
there are reasons, and
I'm not saying they should do a complete ban but maybe they got to put their stuff together over here for over here. You know,
Yeah.
we got to have inspectors in there every other Thursday, checking these. Hey, have what the little machine they have to check for bugs. Like had it just every phone just because
Yeah. And and it's something that the average consumer really takes for granted. You know what I'm saying? And Dave, I mean, well, all of us, if you're familiar with the podcast and have been following it for a minute, all of us are IT professionals. All of us have been in the industry, in multiple facets, and working for multiple types of clients. Myself and Dave, have worked for the man.
Orange man at that.
We're not going to talk about that.
Go ahead and put that banner up again now.
I get started. I still got livelihood. I can't get started on that dude today.
Because he's gonna be back in a couple years, and you need yes, sir, yes, sir. I was work for you, sir.
As a veteran, I'll just say this, and all three of us know where we're getting at from what we've seen on the news in the last 24 to 48 hours. There's some things that come to mind about what we've seen as it relates to what he's done and what would happen to us if we did the same thing. And anybody out there that's watching that, can infer what us means. This is not a racial thing. This is I carry a specific label and I work with a specific type of material that I cannot work. I have to follow the protocols to work with.
Are you talking about unobtainium?
Unobtainium, yes. Yes. I'm trying to avoid me putting the banner up, but
I was gonna put it up. Okay.
But I mean, I think folks, those sorts of things, and and quite honestly, this is kind of a really good segue into what we're talking about because consumer knowledge is very limited sometimes to those things as far as those relationships go. So, when we see things on the news, certain people using certain types of products in certain places where they're not supposed to be using them, for those of us that follow the industry and work in the industry, it leaves us pause a lot because you're not going to be working with a Chinese phone in someplace that's extremely sensitive to specific national interests.
Really, if you're a federal employee, you have no business with a Chinese phone. Like, I don't care how cool it is. Like, come on, guys.
I would also avoid TikTok, but that's another thing.
Yes.
I don't know how one avoids TikTok. I'm genuinely.
I avoid TikTok.
Do you really? I don't know how. Maybe so y'all just never started.
Nope.
Okay, that's fair. If you don't start, then you don't get hooked. But as somebody who has started, hey, TikTok.
I get it though.
TikTok can pop up and just be like, "Hey, if you want to keep using, you got to send us a blood sample," and we send it. Hey, boots. Because I'm like this.
Yeah. But
I think algorithm cold, bruh.
Yeah, but we're gonna take our last ad break, and we are going to close the show out with some final thoughts, which should be interesting given what's been going on. But we're gonna get to that as soon as we get back. Stay tuned.
A Black future happens all the time. It's built on a foundation of those who have paved the way. Trust your dream. The future is counting on it.
Okay, and we're back. We're going to close the show out, and this is just going to be kind of an editorial type of deal for all three of us. I know we said that the show was going to remain mostly apolitical today. But there are some things that have happened in the last 24 to 48 hours that it's going to be kind of hard for us to be silent on. So before we roll out, we're going to have the banners on standby, and we're going to give each of us time to share our thoughts on what we've seen in the last 24 to 48 hours out of the news cycle. Mind you, you got carte blanche. You know what the boundaries are. So, Dave, I'm gonna let you start.
You muted.
You muted, boy. You muted, dude. You muted.
That's what I get. All right. I always do that whenever I'm trying to type, so I don't accidentally type into the mic or whatever. But no, so as a caveat, I'm a federal employee, as most of you all probably know. So I am limited on what I will say. But all I'll say is that for people who are, I don't have anything against, people who support, Republicans, who support Donald Trump. People who know me, I'm more of a conservative myself, right? I will openly admit that I am for fiscal responsibility, smaller government, all that stuff, right? I'm more socially conservative, but at the same time, like, I'm the kind of person I'm going to vote for someone who has some kind of moral fiber, right? And I've said this before, that if you're going to put someone in the highest office in the land, you got to make sure that they have some kind of moral fiber. I don't care whether they are Democrat, Republican, I don't care, right? And I think that we're seeing now the consequences of not doing that. And so I hope and pray that for this next election, that some kind of sense is is being seen, and don't know if it will, but and honestly, I'm a little worried about how things are going, because if certain things don't go the way, I'm afraid that we're just gonna fall deeper into the pit. But I could be surprised. I don't know.
Atlanta. I mean, Georgia flipped. That Georgia flipping is the only thing that over the last couple of years has given me any hope that maybe we'll get involved enough or activated enough into the political discourse that we will just hold people accountable. I don't care what people's individual politics are. I care about doing the most good for the most people by any means necessary, and that's where we're we gotta. Right now it's I was gonna go on the rant. I'm gonna let you finish that. My bad.
No, I mean, no, I just say no. I somewhat piggyback on that. Like, just everyone should be held to the same standard. It doesn't matter. Even my fellow conservatives love to rail about Hunter Biden. Like, if he did something wrong, like, arrest him. Like, seriously, arrest him. I don't care if he's the son of the president. I don't care if he did something wrong. Arrest him. If Donald Trump did something wrong, arrest him. It doesn't matter who it is. Like, we have laws for a reason. Those laws should be applied evenly, theoretically. And so that, all I ask is that for this next election cycle, determine who do you want to be president, or who in any office, and determine what kind of moral fiber do they have, and are they consistent with what they believe. Like, so whether they're Democrat, Republican, I tend to vote libertarian, but that's me. But that's all I'll say on that. So
I'm gonna let you go, Dom.
So this dude is the first president that had the National Espionage Act. Was one of them things you just never even thought that you'd have to worry about. Like maybe there's a Russian spy or something that we gotta get a hold of that you will never hear about. I'm sure it happens all the time. I'm sure NEA violations happen all the time that you never hear about, because they are getting them up out of here, getting them out of here, right? But the president, it's never happened. It's crazy that it happened. It's crazy this stuff was just laying in boxes in his golf course. His golf course ain't secure. Me, you, and Dave could Ocean's 11 heisted Mar-a-Lago. Probably not us, actually. We probably would have needed to be Chad, Hunter, and Tanner. but three random goofy white dudes could have broke into Mar-a-Lago and took everything. This dude's not secure like that. So, and you can tell that he's not a secure person by the way he tweets. So, I understand that it has to be scary. I do my best to like empathize. I try my best to think about life as a straight white man, right? How scary it must be that the foundations of power are shaking, right? There's uncertainty there. And I even if you're well-meaning, the idea that if you're thinking, if I'm not the default, if I'm not like automatically, if I'm not powerful just in my whiteness, then maybe the cops start treating me like they treat black people. That's crazy, right? You start thinking about like all the negative things that happen with equality, because if equality is applied, because they know you can weaponize the police, and you can tell that by how they weaponize the police whenever it suits them. And so they're thinking, oh Lord, if the cops ever start looking at us all as equals, they can weaponize them against me. I'm a butthead. I do a lot of stuff that's cop callable worthy that nobody called because black people don't call the police. So it's, I understand that it's got to be scary. It is what it is. It's crazy that this quote unquote representative democracy that we live in allows for about 36% of the population to have such a chokehold on our politics, like, because there's no reason that 2 senators are coming out of freaking Wyoming, and the 2 senators, and they got the same power of a vote coming out of California, when you got quadruple the population, right? And it just doesn't make sense that we continue to understand it. It doesn't make sense. We keep doing it. This the popular vote not being what elects the president. It just, all these things, it just makes no sense, and it is what it is. We can talk to it blue in the face. It's not going to change. We need to activate the populace. We need to activate the electorate, because even a lot of these red states are being hoodwinked, because the right is the only side of things that have a completely. I'm not saying that CNN and what the Republicans call mainstream media isn't left skewing, but it's not. Like, if you saw what happened, how Fox News was reporting the Mar-a-Lago raid, I mean, the difference in the way they cover this stuff is, I mean, they have a fully equipped propaganda machine that's coming on every night, all day. It's 24 hours a day. These cats can go turn on their TV and watch people spin things in a way that makes them feel better about their racism. And until we can do something to counteract that, and the only way to do it, we outnumber them by a lot. And so until we can activate the electorate, activate the populace all across, because Georgia ain't the only state that's gonna flip eventually. But I think before that happens, I think we're gonna have another 4 years of Velveeta Voldemort. And while that's happening, everybody's gonna have to, batten down the hatchets, hold on tight. This storm's gonna come on through, and then when we get through it, hopefully at the other, you be like, oh, there really was a difference between Biden and Trump.
I swear that's like one of the funniest things that has come out of this thing. All the different nicknames.
Yeah.
So real quick, I'll say, if you want news that's relatively unbiased, and you just want the straight fact, you don't care about any skewing, the AP, Reuters, and BBC. Just stick with those 3. I promise you, you'll feel a lot better. Because sometimes I'll watch CNN, I'm like, oh gosh. Or I'll watch Fox News, I'm like, oh gosh. In fact, at my job, there's like a little mini war going on between the employees, where some people change the channel to Fox News, and then someone will come change the channel to CNN. It's hilarious.
Hatfields and McCoys. Now,
go ahead.
Before I get started, I'm going to put my banner up, because I want people to understand how serious these last 24 to 48 hours has been for everybody. As we mentioned before, all 3 of us are IT professionals. Myself and Dom are veterans, and Dave works for an unmentioned entity. All of us have worked in the realm of having the types of clearances that the commander-in-chief had. Now, Dom said something very important during his closing, and I want people to really understand this. This is the first time ever in the history of this country that a sitting or a former commander-in-chief or president of the United States has even remotely been investigated for violations of the National Espionage Act. Let me put that into context. Anybody that is seriously investigated for the National Espionage Act is cooling their jets in prison right now. We're talking about people like Aldrich Ames, David Jansen. If you're not familiar with those guys sold out CIA agents to the Russians. We're talking about people like Anna Montez, sold out CIA and United States Navy secrets to Cubans and by proxy to the Russians. We're talking about John David Walker that sold submarine secrets, nuclear technology to the Russians. We're talking about a multitude of other people as late as 2009, I believe, that have violated that act. And in every single instance where there's an investigation that's gone down in violation of that act, there's been a conviction. As someone that has worked in the realm, both as as active military and as a veteran, it's scary stuff. It's scary in the sense that there's a very real cause and effect from the dissemination of that information to the costing of lives and livelihood. As any of those guys that I just mentioned, and that's a matter of use of Google in public domain, but that's stuff that gets people killed. And I think the fact that from an optics perspective that we have a former president of the United States, the person that has the highest clearance level in the country, essentially, being investigated for an NEA violation. There's a lot of damage just in that statement alone that's been done. And I don't think people really understand the extent of that damage until this blows over and our allies and our adversaries look at us as, wow, they're really compromised. So I want people to really understand one of the reasons why we kind of avoided talking about this, because at this point, it's not really a progressive or conservative deal. Now, of course, the people that, like myself, that, have been, ringing the alarm about Donald J. Trump, for the better part of 30 years, are we going to say we told you so? Yeah, we're going to say we told you so. Because before this dude even ran, if the federal case for housing discrimination didn't tell you anything, if the full page month-long, 2 to 3 month-long ads ran in the New York Times and the Washington Post during the Central Park 5.
Exonerated 5.
Exonerated 5. Thank you, Dominique. I appreciate that. The Exonerated 5 trial didn't tell you anything. The fact that he's defrauded thousands of people prior to running for office didn't tell you anything. It tells you a lot. It tells you a lot, not necessarily about the grifter that Donald Trump was, because we already knew that. It tells you a lot about where this country is still at and just how far this country still has to go in terms of viewing each other equally. Because this dude got into office for one reason. There are a lot of people that didn't like the guy and the family in office for the previous administration. They didn't like the lady that was running against him for this administration. And that goes a lot deeper than progressive and conservative. A lot deeper. And it's something to think about as the Ron DeSantis's of the world and, our boy Cheeto fights this out. Because
ain't gonna be no fight. He'll be in the knee.
The underlying current is still there. And it's a current that all of us have to deal with. That's all I got.
Word.
Oh, don't forget to like and subscribe.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. Yes. Don't forget to like and subscribe the Black Techies podcast. We can be found on HBCU Digital Network, on YouTube, on Twitch, on Twitter.
Twitter.
Yes, Twitter. And to everybody that supported us over the years and continues to support us, thank you. We do this for you guys. And, the fact that we fill a niche that really needs to be filled, thank you guys for your support. For all the new students that are going to school and getting their first taste of the HBCU experience.
Hopefully you went to the right one. TSU.
You see this right
Big
here,
Blue.
The Alabama State University.
Yeah, buddy.
Until next time, for myself, Dominic Bass, David Matthews, hail Wakanda.
Wakanda forever.
Hail Wakanda.
Have I not given you
The first ever HBCU Band Anthology, The HBCU Experience. The HBCU Band Alumni Edition is a collection of stories written by prominent HBCU band alumni throughout the world. HBCU band alumni who are doing great things in their careers, businesses, and communities nationally and internationally. The authors share their stories and experiences of how being a HBCU band member has molded them into the people they are today. Purchase your copy today and support the HBCU Experience, the HBCU Band Alumni Edition at Amazon.com.